Kia ora and welcome to the Cleine Line. I'm Jamie Cleine, former Mayor of Buller. These days, I'm using my experience in local and national leadership to reflect on life on the coast, the challenges facing our communities and the issues shaping New Zealand. This isn't the official line, it's the Cleine Line. Straight talk, no spin, no script, just honest reflections from the coast and sometimes on what's happening from the halls of Parliament too. Today, we're talking about something that sounds a bit technical, but hits very close to home. What happens to a region when airline routes start disappearing? Not in theory, in real life. In places like Buller, where the highway isn't always reliable and the rest of the country can feel a very long way away. Now, this isn't doom and gloom, it's a reality check. Because if we want the coast to thrive, we need to stay connected. It's as simple as that. Now, before we dig into policy and economics, let's rewind and take a quick flight down memory lane. Now, Westport has had scheduled air service since the late 1940s. NAC flew in here from Wellington via Nelson long before anyone was Instagramming the scenic window shots. Then came the DC-3s. Then, in 1970, the Westport runway got sealed, and the Fokker Friendships arrived 6 days a week, flying a circuit from Christchurch, Hokitika and Nelson. That was a really big deal. It signalled confidence that places like Westport deserved a proper connection to everywhere else. Jump through to 2015, and Air New Zealand ended its 68-year run here. The community didn't shrug, it certainly hurt, and it caused real anxiety about what would follow. Thankfully, the Buller District Council worked with Sounds Air to keep things going, starting their service with a 9-seat Pilatus aircraft, which continued until the end of 2024. That's when Origin Air entered the scene. In January, they began flying the 18-seat Jetstream 32 with their fresh touch of optimism. That story really matters, because if service was to stop now, it wouldn't be losing a nice to have, it would be pulling out a thread that has been part of this community's fabric for over 70 years. We're not passengers on this issue. The community is a stakeholder in regional connectivity. Regional connectivity by air and flights such as the Westport route really matter. They aren't just about skipping a long drive. They bring investors to look at opportunities instead of lines on a map. They let a mum fly to Wellington for medical care that she can't get locally. Or they let a student come home easily enough that home still feels like home. And global data backs this up. Aviation supports millions of jobs worldwide and billions in economic contribution. In smaller communities like ours, the effects are even sharper. Lose a route and the ripple spreads fast. Fewer visitors, shaky business confidence, and rising costs to get anywhere. On the coast, when the road washes out, having a plane available is not a luxury, it's a key part of our community's resilience. Now to the tough bit. Airlines certainly aren't charities, and there's been some fundamental changes to the economic drivers of small airline operators in New Zealand. Here's a clip from a media interview with Sounds Air's Andrew Crawford. He talks openly about routes that don't make money, hard calls about pulling out and selling their Pilatus aircraft.
Since COVID, aviation's been out of control cost-wise, and we've spoken to government numerous times. We've had endless meetings with ministers. We've cancelled Taupo and Westport services in December. We've already sold one aircraft, left to go to North America, and faced with no choice, in the last 3 months, we've had another $500,000 of annual costs imposed on the business, and at some point, you've got to say no more. We just can't do it. So unfortunately, Christchurch Blenheim and Christchurch Wanaka services will go, and we'll sell our entire PC-12 fleet.
Now, Soundsia have been working on this issue for a long time and advocating to central government for assistance. There's been substantial increases to airfares to a point where the travelling public can no longer sustain.
Since COVID, 22% we've got our fares up. They could go up another 22% easily and it still wouldn't be enough. 38 countries around the world support regional connectivity because they get it. It's just not possible, but New Zealand's not one of them. Australia is, the USA is, but we don't do it here. And this is now the cost of it.
So that's the commercial truth. If customers don't fill seats or can't afford to travel, airlines are forced to shift resources. They simply must to survive. Now, the strong advocacy to central government on this issue by Soundsia and the other industry stakeholders has landed some new initiatives that will be introduced to support regional airlines. Clearly, too late for Soundsia, who have already made some tough calls on their fleet rationalisation. But perhaps it is a sign of progress for other airlines facing a similar fate. Here's Air Chatham's CEO, Dwayne Emeny, in a media interview offering a slightly sunnier perspective on new government support and industry initiatives that might just keep these routes working a little longer.
Yeah, we actually met with Minister Meager and we talked about a range of things, but yes, we flagged that there were 2 routes on our current network likely to be cancelled if there was no government support. So the announcement today is incredible. It allows us to relook at that, and we look forward to getting more details around how Kānoa are going to work it through. You know, when you're in the aviation business, everything just seems to be so much more expensive, and there's a fair amount of risk associated with our industry as well. All of that risk ultimately transfers to, if people are going to loan you money to do stuff, it's going to be a whole lot more expensive than it would be for other businesses. And that's where I think the concessionary loan scheme will be really important, because what effectively it's saying is that the government actually appreciates that what we do is for the greater national good, and I believe it is, and that they are really putting a line in the sand and saying that we need to support that. And this is a really, really good, positive start. We need to applaud government for that.
So the main part of the government support package is $30 million being made available for concessionary loans. Smaller airlines will be able to apply to Kānoa, a government agency who will administer the fund.
This is one piece in a bigger jigsaw that the Minister's been putting up with this aviation action plan. There's a whole lot of detail that we're led to believe is going to be coming out very soon as part of that action plan, which will be released. And that'll focus on a whole range of areas, like, you know, some of the structural cost issues, which all airlines, including the national carrier, have been talking about.
Some of those other initiatives include an interline agreement with Air New Zealand and the smaller airlines, and a review of the fees structure charged to airlines by the various regulators. Light at the end of the tunnel, perhaps. 2 very experienced operators, 2 very different angles, all battling the same challenge. So although the New Zealand government has initiated some support for regional airlines, we're certainly not the only country wrestling with this conundrum. Other nations have decided that losing regional flights costs them a lot more in the long run. Here's a clip from Australian Prime Minister Albanese speaking in Parliament about his support for regional air connectivity.
Confirming that as part of our building of Australia's future, this government will support regional airlines. We have announced that we'll support REX and ensure that regional communities have access to crucial air services. Without those air services, not only will people not have access to our big capital cities, they won't have access to health services that they need, that visit to the doctor. You won't be able to support the tourism sector. A lot of freight also goes on that transport as well, which is so important.
For some time, Australia has backed hundreds of remote communities with government funding to keep planes in the sky. Now, their view is simple. These flights are infrastructure. They're like a bridge, and if the bridge falls down, the community fails. Now, there's academic research that agrees. Here's a media interview with Dr. Ian Douglas, University of New South Wales, laying out how governments worldwide step in to keep marginal routes alive.
It's not an unusual thing. There are other countries like Australia with a thin population and big distances, in Canada, in Finland, where it's not unusual for governments to provide some financial support. And that doesn't necessarily mean that a government needs to own an airline to do that. It may be that for some markets that are so thin that they're not commercially viable but are important to be connected, that governments around the world underpin the operating costs of some of those routes.
Now let's translate some of that relevant research. In New Zealand studies, more flights mean more visitors and a stronger property market. When flights disappear, investment confidence weakens and young people leave an area much faster. And once a route is gone, it is very hard to get it back. Now, Australia's approach, like many other countries in the world, acknowledge that markets alone won't serve everyone. They target support where isolation would otherwise win the day. And I think we can learn from that, and the government to some degree is learning from that already. Now let's circle back to what this means for us here in Bulla. Right now, Westport continues to have a reliable airlink provided by Nelson-based Origin Air. That continues to connect us to Wellington in around 50 minutes. That's valuable. Fragile, but really valuable. Now losing that would make specialist healthcare trips so much harder, make tourism growth that bit slower, make attracting workers and families a lot tougher. It would also send a signal we absolutely do not want to send, that Bulla is simply a place too hard to reach. Communities that thrive are communities that stay connected. Now the good news is that we're not starting from scratch here. We have airlines willing to serve us. We have a government that now recognises that at some places support is needed. We can do more through smart demand building, working with our local business stakeholders and marketing our region as a modern and connected place to live, work and play. It can be easy to walk away when challenges stack up, or simply let the market decide. The harder thing is backing our regions to stay connected, to stay confident, and to keep momentum alive. Because these routes are more than seats on a plane. They carry our jobs, our investment, healthcare, sport, whānau, and the belief that our future does not stop at the mountains or the coastline. When flights keep going, communities keep going. The skies might seem far off, yet a single service can open doors that would otherwise stay shut. Regional New Zealand has proven its resilience time and again, and keeping opportunity in the air is one way we share that strength with the world. That's it for this episode. Thanks for listening to the Cleine Line. This podcast is here to spark conversation, share a bit of insight, and shine a light on the things that matter to Bulla. But I also want to hear what matters to you. If there's an issue you'd like my thoughts on, someone in the community we should feature, or a topic you think deserves some airtime, send me an email, jamie@theclineline.com. I'll be back next time with more updates, reflections, and what's been happening around the district. Until then, thanks for tuning in, and we'll talk again soon.